Howdy, and welcome to Brandi's Book Stack. Today, I'm going to talk about the books that I read in March. But first, let me correct a little bit of errata from my books I read in January and February. I forgot to mention a couple of books that I did read in those months, one of which was a book by Diane Mott Davidson called Sweet Revenge. It was sort of a middle-of-the-road cozy mystery novel, and it was kind of aggressively okay. It was about what I expected it to be, nothing super exciting. In that book, we follow a caterer who's also married to a police officer in a small town in Colorado who's trying to figure out the murder of the district attorney. And what makes her interested in this murder is that she runs into what she thinks is the woman who killed her ex-husband. And for some reason, she thinks that this woman will come after her and her son, which I don't really understand why she had that fear, which was one of the reasons the book wasn't rated more highly for me. It was okay. The mystery reveal was decent, and it was fairly cozy. There was lots of talk about the catering and the food business, which was entertaining, but I would say it was about a 3-star. Nothing too exciting, nothing too terrible. The other book I forgot to mention that I did talk a little bit in my Books No One Is Talking About video is The Prisoner of Zenda, which I read for Michael K. Vaughan's Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. This is a book club where everything is available on Gutenberg for free because it's in the public domain. This book I thought was really exceptional. It was a 5-star for me. I didn't expect to like this one as much as I did. In that one we follow a young aristocrat who, in his family's history, in his ancestry, one of his family members had an affair with the king of Ruritania, which is a made-up country that's in Europe somewhere. And he decides he's going to go to Ruritania for a vacation and just see what it's like. And when he gets there, he finds out that he looks like an exact doppelganger for the king. There's some mistaken identity, and then eventually he takes over the role of the king through some circumstances, and adventure ensues. It's a really fun kind of swashbuckling tale, adventure story that I just really liked. It was a lot of fun. And I really recommend that if you haven't already checked out Michael K. Vaughan's channel, you should do so because he's really entertaining. Even though his taste in literature is not always the same as mine, I still find what he has to say fun and entertaining. And he really has a lot of joy for books, which is part of why I joined his book club. So those were the two I missed from last time. And mainly I missed those because the Diane Mott Davidson book I had already unhauled. And then the Prisoner of Zenda I had read on my Kindle, so I didn't actually have physical copies of those. So on to what I read in the month of March. In the month of March, I read a couple more Rosamund Pilcher romances, and I know you may say, "Hey, Brandi, why? You said that romance is one of your favorite genres. Why so many romances?" Well, I've been reading some heavy literature that I haven't got to yet. I'll get to one of those here in a minute. And I kind of read some of these light romances to counterbalance the heavy stuff, but I get through them a lot more quickly. So you'll see me reading a lot more light, cozy fiction to counterbalance some of the heavier stuff I'm reading that will be coming up soon. So The Empty House was one that I read. This is about a woman whose husband has passed away, even though she's fairly young. And she has 2 children, but because her husband was relatively wealthy, he really wanted her to live in sort of the aristocratic fashion and have the children raised by a nanny and not really have anything to do with them. And this is something she's always sort of resented, and she's wanting to kind of take her family back. But her mother-in-law has taken over the kids since her husband has passed away, because she just kind of fell apart when that happened. And she's now at the point where she's kind of regaining her sense of self and wants to bring those children back. And so she goes to a place that she had visited in her youth and had had a good experience there and had met a gentleman there who, of course, she reconnects with in this book. But I really thought the main story of this was how she sort of started taking charge of her own life and stopped letting others live her life for her. So I did really like this one. Even though she started out as kind of a weak character, she gained her strength as the novel wore on. So that's The Empty House by Rosamund Pilcher. I'd say this is about a 3.5. The next one is Wild Mountain Thyme. This is another Rosamund Pilcher where I really have difficulties with the heroine being so weak-willed. In this book, we follow a young woman who had dated a man in her past who treated her abominably. He made her believe that they were exclusive, and then one day just pops in on her and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm getting married." And she's like, "What? I thought we were exclusive. I don't understand." And he's like, "Oh yeah, we were never anything serious." She's devastated, but she gets on with her life. And then a couple of years later, this man comes back into her life with a 2-year-old in tow. And he just sort of expects her to take care of this 2-year-old for him. It's his son. And she just agrees to do it. Which he does agree to take her on a trip to Scotland to meet one of her favorite authors. So, okay, I can get a little motivation there. But, I mean, she also starts up the relationship with him, which I just can't fathom. But again, this is a book that by the end of the book, the heroine does kind of regain her sense of self, although she does it largely through a relationship with another man, which I don't love. But it was good, and of course, all the scenery and nature writing in Scotland is just beautiful, like it always is with Rosamund Pilcher. This is more 3 than maybe even a 2.5 for Wild Mountain Thyme. So the next book that I read is a middle grade book about the Tulsa Race Massacre. If you weren't aware, I grew up in the Tulsa area, and so this is kind of pertinent to our local history. This was pretty good. The storytelling in it was really nice. The one thing I kind of don't like is this is written by a white author, and the main protagonist is a white 15-year-old boy. And I have kind of mixed feelings about that because I do feel like this is a story that should be told by the people who were most affected by it. Initially, I thought that was the case. I didn't even think to check, and I didn't check until later and was like, oh wow, this is written by a white person. But nevertheless, if you're looking for a book that would give a white kid maybe some empathy and understanding, I think this would do a good job of that. Because the storytelling was really, really nice in it. And there's a lot about family and found family in this book that I just thought was really charming. So it was definitely worth it. I would say about 4 stars for this one. The next book was a reread for me. That is The Secret Adversary by Agatha Christie. This is in one of those Franklin copies that I love so well. And this is probably my second favorite of her novels that I've read so far. The Secret Adversary is the first in the Tommy and Tuppence novels, which is really cute. They start out as just a couple of friends, and romance ensues as they work to kind of find jobs after World War I, and they kind of stumble into intelligence work in this. It's very lighthearted for a mystery, but the mystery itself is really interesting. And I really, really love this one. It's a true 5-star read for me. If you have never read any of the Tommy and Tuppence mysteries, I really like those. Later, the mysteries feature them as a married couple, which I really like as well. So, Secret Adversary, great book. Next is this tome. This is one of the reasons I read some of the light romances. This book is Gargantua and Pantagruel. I'll get a little close there, by Francois Rabelais. And this book was terrible in my opinion. A lot of people refer to Rabelais as equivalent to Shakespeare. how they see this, I don't know. The only thing I can figure is that, Shakespeare, we love him for the way he handles the English language itself. And perhaps that's the case with Rabelais, and since I don't speak French, I don't get that sort of feeling from him. But Rabelais existed in the 1500s. This book was written in the 1500s. And it is just so misogynist. That's my biggest problem with this book. There is a scene called The Lady of Paris where a character called Panurge, who is supposed to be a rake and a scoundrel, but nevertheless, he comes across a married woman who refuses to sleep with him. And he harasses her, and when he finally gets the picture that she's not going to sleep with him, he decides the only thing to do is to get the scent of a dog in heat and rub it all over her beautiful clothes so that every dog in town will come and try to tear her apart and destroy her clothes, maybe kill her. Wouldn't that be great? And this is all told like it's the most hilarious story that ever was, and it's really disturbing. And then there's several other instances where women throughout this book are only seen as vehicles to sex. Pure and simple, that's it. And it's just really ugly from that perspective. Also, it's extremely repetitive. Throughout this book, they have a lot of lists that go on for pages and pages. And let me see if I can find a quick example. But as they go through these lists, like for example, they'll talk about a banquet. And when they talk about the banquet, they'll list everything that was served at said banquet. And it goes on for pages and pages and pages. And of course now I'm having trouble finding it. And then there's one place in this book where the main character calls another character a ball bag. Yes, that kind of ball bag. And it goes on for 2 pages the different types of ball bag this person is. He's a sweaty ball bag. He's a hairy ball bag. He's a stupid ball bag. He's a on and on and on for like 3 pages. It's just kind of ridiculous. Like you can see, this is kind of the list type of thing you see that goes on for several pages. It's just kind of tedious more than anything else. And then finally, a good huge portion of this book is dick and fart jokes. Yes, you heard me right, dick and fart jokes. Apparently, Rabelais thinks it is the most hilarious thing in the world when someone goes to the bathroom. So the 2 characters in this book, Gargantua and Pantagruel, Gargantua is the father, Pantagruel is the son, and they're both giants. And like when he talks about Gargantua growing up, he talks about how hilarious it is that when he urinates, it floods a whole town. Ha 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 ha. It's just not that funny. It's split into 5 novels. This is about 715 pages in this. I read this, so you don't have to. Spare yourself the time. If you do want to see, whether this just might even be something for you, I would suggest read the first book. And then if that is not doing it for you, it probably isn't going to change as you go through the rest of this. It does have some good qualities to it. It's not completely devoid of meaning. It's got some good satire on the church, on the world of academia at the time. And for that reason, I didn't give it 1 star. I only give 1 star when I feel something's just devoid of value. But it was a 2, and that was kind of pushing it. So that's Gargantua and Pantagruel. It's an experience I'm glad I'm over with. Finally, the next book I read on my Kindle, and it was wonderful, and that is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I have read I've read Jane Eyre before, and I really loved that book, and so I thought I would see what her sister could do, and I have to say, surprisingly, I love Tenant of Wildfell Hall more than I did even Jane Eyre. And I think the reason for that is I felt like Tenant of Wildfell Hall felt really honest and really real. This story felt like it could have actually happened. In this novel, we follow a woman who has, we'll just say, some problems with the men in her life. And I don't want to go too deep into detail because a lot of this book is, the plot is unraveled as kind of a mystery. We start the book in a community where there's a young woman who comes with her son to Wildfeld Hall. And this is a large manor, and she's only using a small space of it for economic reasons. But she doesn't tell anybody about her past, where she came from, or why she's here. And so the mystery of that sort of unravels as you go along. But I just really felt like it was realistic. If you are triggered by domestic abuse, domestic violence, this would be a book to avoid. But I do feel like this was a good novel and very representative of what a woman would likely have dealt with at the time that Anne Bronte was writing. So exceptional for me, 5 out of 5 stars, Tentative Wildfeld Hall, excellent read. I'm looking for kind of a prestige version of that book to put on my own bookshelves. So that's it. What have you been reading over the last month in March? Do you have any good spring book recommendations? I look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Thanks. Bye.